Good morning, friends. Allow me to pray for you. Father, we want to thank you for all the good and positive things which has occurred in this chamber during the current session. You've been so kind as to offer wisdom, insight, and knowledge as the work for the people of Kansas has moved forward. Today, I pray your blessings upon each of these who have helped to make our state an even better place to call home. As this part of our session begins to wind down, help us to end well, Father. Your word teaches, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other. Might we strive to imitate you as we work to leave a legacy of achievement for the people of Kansas. We want to thank you once again for the wonderful support we have received from those who have worked so hard to make our load a little lighter. Janitors and clerks and pages, security personnel, and all of our wonderful helpers in areas too numerous to count. And we'd be remiss in not mentioning our families to you. It has been through their faithfulness that we have been able to accomplish so many good things. Thank you for their faithfulness and patience. And after this session closes, remind us people are still watching us. They so want to trust and respect. Help us to never be the one who violates that trust. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Indivisible.
Have all the members had the opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. The Speaker recognizes Representative Ballard on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not the best time because everybody still has their own things that they want to do. But my point of personal privilege this morning, actually, I wanted to do during Women's History Month in March, and so I'm doing it today. And I'll start by telling you that I'm going to tell you a true story of what happened during World War II. And I think it's of value. Several years ago, I mentioned this group of women, but since then, they have had several recognitions, and I would like to share that today. This true story is about keeping the morale of the soldiers and their families, and that was extremely important at that point. And I'm talking about 6888. And 6888, you'll find out more about what I'm going to say. I will try to do this within 4.5 minutes. So if I go fast, you know why, because I don't want to be gabbled down, okay? But let's just start by how an all-Black female World War II unit saved morale on the battlefield. And this is taken from 2 different articles. In 1941, U.S. Representative Edith Rogers of Massachusetts introduced a bill that would give women a larger role in the armed forces, President Roosevelt signed a version of that bill into law, establishing the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps for the purpose of making available to the National Defense the knowledge, skill, and special training of women of the nation. The pioneering Black educator, Mary McLeod Bethune, working alongside her close friend, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, argued for a more prominent role for Black women in the military. We must not fail, Bethune urged her fellow Americans, and we must not let America fail us. In 1943, this organization dropped the word auxiliary and allowed women to become members of the regular Army. Altogether, 6,500 Black women enlisted in the Women's Army Corps during World War II. Charity Edna Edwards, a young woman from South Carolina, was recommended by a dean at Wilberforce University, where she graduated with a triple major in math, physics, and Latin, and a minor in history. What was the problem they needed to solve? The problem was all United States service members stationed in Europe had individual file cards noting where they were at any given time, but the troops had been moving quickly and the mail had fallen far behind. It didn't help that so many service members had the same name. For instance, there were 7,500 Robert Smiths, minute listed under Bob, Rob, or Bobby. This Women Corps women, 855, traveled to Birmingham, England, where they moved into King Edward's a building, basically. And their work environment was not very good at all. Their main task was to clear 6 airplane hangars filled to the brim with mail, including huge piles of Christmas parcels and cards that had arrived during the recent Battle of the Bulge. Rats and other vermin were feasting on the baked goods, and the windows were blacked out to deter air raids. The unit worked around the clock, 7 days a week, in 3 8-hour shifts that each processed an average of more than 65,000 pieces of mail. Some packages had been damaged, and they had to try to match up as much as they could. And they also had the task of censoring these letters, making sure no sensitive information would compromise the war effort. By May 1945, the women had achieved in 3 months what no one before them had managed to do in 2 years. They cleared the mail backlog in England. From there, they were transferred to France to tackle more mail issues. The 6888 finished their work in early 1946, clearing the last backlog of mail in Paris. And there was a booklet that declared that the 6888 had broken all existing records for mail delivery. These women delivered 17 million pieces of mail between soldiers and their loved ones at home. That mail was important for people at home to know that their loved ones were doing well, even though they arrived late and everything else. But 17 million pieces of mail was done, keeping up the morale of the soldiers and their families. In 2015, Colonel Cummings.
Representative,
Yes.
you have run out of time, but
Okay. Can I have a minute?
just one more minute.
At this point, what they ended up looking at was they wanted to recommend these women for a Congressional Medal of Honor. And I just want to read a story that will tell you something that's interesting. On a chilly November day in 2018, 5 members of the 666 attended an unveiling ceremony in wheelchairs. My dad is a World War II veteran, said Jerry Moran, the senior U.S. Senator from Kansas, addressing the women. I never thought about it on a personal level until I was with you today. What role you and others played in my family's life to make sure that my mom and dad communicated with each other for the long period of World War II. So from my family, a personal thank you for keeping two people who loved each other together. When we unveiled this memorial, what are we really saying? Thank you for your service. We respect you and we love you, and God bless you. As a result of this, they have the Congressional Medal of Honor that Senator Moran helped to sponsor, and a movie is being made, and it will be introduced later this year, and you can see it. It's 6888. And it will talk about what these women did for World War II and the soldiers and their families. Thank you for your pain, and I appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
Would you like your words spread across the journal?
I would love my words to be spread across the journal. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
The Senate announced the appointment of Senators Thompson, Cluse, and Faust-Cadeau to replace Senators Longbine, Fagan-Holster as conferees on House Bill 2532. Senate announced the appointment of Senators Gossage, Erickson, and Petty to replace Senators Longbine, Fagan-Holster as Senate conferees on House Bill 2531. Senate announced the appointment of Senators Billinger, Clays, and Petty to replace Senators Longbine, Fagan, Pittman as Senate conferees on House Bill 2105. Senate announced the appointment of Senators Billinger, Clays, and Petty to replace Senators Longbine, Fagan-Holster as Senate conferees on Senate Bill 18. The Senate announced the appointment of Senator Schellenberger to replace Senator Cluse as a conferee on House substitute for Senate Bill 143.
Introduction of original motions and House resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Resolution 6046 by Representative Poskin, a resolution congratulating 7 days on its 10th anniversary of teaching kindness and making a ripple to change the world.
On HR 6046, the Speaker recognizes Representative Poskin for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, I bring forward House Resolution 6046 in honor of kindness and understanding. May there ever be more of both in this world. 10 years ago, on April 14th, 2014, House District 20 was shattered by the tragic shooting deaths at the Jewish Community Center and the Village Shalom retirement. Fueled by anti-Semitic hate, the gunman took the lives of 14-year-old Reet Underwood, his grandfather, Dr. William Corporon, both members of my church, and Terry Lamano, who was making her weekly visit to her mother in the Village Retirement Center. In the aftermath, two families in our community joined hands and hearts to shine a light on the darkness of hate, and the 7 Days organization was born. The 7 Days experience provides opportunities encouraging all people to increase kindness through knowledge, mindset, and behavior. Today, our House resolution congratulates 7 Days on its 10th anniversary of teaching kindness and understanding through education and dialogue, and making a ripple to change our broken world. Today, I introduce 7 Days board member Lisa Schiffman and Ruth Biggis, Media and Community Relations Director, and thank them for their tireless efforts as they begin their 10th anniversary celebratory events on April 10th, to which everyone, including this body, is invited. Please see the flyers on your desks for detailed information. Please join me in full support and encouragement of all in Kansas, including residents, businesses, organizations, and visitors, to come together during the 7 days to act more kindly and be more understanding of differences, thereby making the world a better place, one ripple at a time. With that, I move the adoption of House Resolution 6046 and ask that my words be spread across the journal.
You've
Thank
all
you,
heard the
body.
motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Without objection, so ordered. Are there announcements? Speaker recognizes Representative Stockstill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats, we will have a short agenda meeting as soon as we recess here today. Shorter meeting, 152 South.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, we will have our prayer breakfast. We have a speaker that's coming in all the way from Western Kansas, from Deerfield, Kansas. So I hope you have a chance to come. It's in room 142, 7 o'clock a.m. See you there.
Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House and Senate Tax Conference Committee will continue after the Ag Conference Committee gets done. I think we're just planning on about 30 minutes after first recess of the second chamber, however that works. We also have, that's House and Senate Tax. We also have a House Tax and Senate Local Government Conference Committee on House Bill 2176. We are tentatively planning on 1 o'clock for that conference committee in room 112 North. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Kunkanen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will conference at the, what do you say, first recess of the second house. And and 582 North with Senate Judiciary, Child Welfare Committee with regarding all bills in conference.
Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Ag and Natural Resources Committee will hopefully get finished up here this morning here at recess in 118 North. And pray for us, brother.
Representative Tarwater.
Attention Commerce fans. Reminder that we have a meeting with the Senate Commerce Committee on all bills in conference right after we're done. Also, Fed and State, we have a meeting with Fed and State around 2:30 this afternoon, room to be announced for the two bills that have to do with the countries of concern.
Representative Bergquist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Local Government Committee will continue conference committee with the Senate at 11:30 in room 212B North, and that's the ceremonial conference room. Thank you.
Representative Waymaster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apparently, I just got a message that the House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means is going to be conferencing in 548 South at 10:40 a.m. this morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Wassinger.
Legislative Modernization, there will be a conference committee in 144 South at 5 p.m. today.
At this time, I'd like to recognize former Representative David French along the South Wall. Seeing no further announcements, the Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to recess.
All right, Republicans, we are going to calendar in the old Supreme Court immediately upon recess. It's a very short recess. So, Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 10:30 a.m.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are in recess. Motion carries. House will come to order. The Speaker recognizes Representative Francis for a motion to adopt the Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 142.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 142 is something we've already seen in one way or another, most of it once or twice. Last time Senate Bill 142 came before the House, it passed 104 to 18, and in the Senate it passed 38 to 2. Senate 142, if you'll remember, has two provisions. One is it's extending the move-over law to any stopped vehicle displaying warning signals. A stopped vehicle displaying hazard warning signal lamps, road flares, or caution signals to proceed with caution and change lanes away from the stopped vehicle if possible and safe to do so. If you can't move over because the lane's blocked, you're supposed to proceed with due caution and slow up. The fine on that one is $75. And the second part of it that we've seen before and was also part of 142 was prohibiting the mobile phone use in certain circumstances and for drivers younger than 18. You're not supposed to have this prima facie evidence if you have a mobile phone in your hand and you're in a work zone with workers present, or if you're in an active school zone. This one requires a warning citation if you violate it prior to July 1 of 2025, and after that, there's a $60 fine. The third part of this conference committee report you have not seen, and what it does is it increases the penalties if you fail to move over and a emergency service personnel is injured or killed. So currently, there's a $190 fine if you fail to move over for our emergency services vehicles, if they're on the side of the road. The parts that we used on this, we hadn't seen it in the House yet, were one, if you actually strike and injure a law enforcement officer, emergency medical service provider, or firefighter, the violation would be a level 6 severity personal felony, and the bill would require the court to impose a fine of no less than $1,000. That is equivalent to aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer. The second part of it is if you fail to move over and it results in the death of any person serving as a law enforcement officer, emergency medical service provider, or firefighter, the violation would be a severity level 5 personal felony and a $7,500 fine. And that is a comparable crime that gets a level 5 is involuntary manslaughter. And so that, Mr. Speaker, I would move the adoption of the conference committee report, and I'll stand for questions.
For discussion, the Speaker recognizes Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also, the Chairman of Transportation, explain this changes that we made in our conference committee as well. And you have seen this before, and I'm in favor of it and ask you to please vote for it. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move my motion.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 142. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Representative Laura Williams is excused. The clerk will close the roll. Representative Carlin votes he votes aye. Members will be in their seats. Seeing 10 hands, calls in order. Doorman will secure the doors. Members will be in their seats. Clerk will call the roll.
Representatives Hauser, Penn, Chuck Smith, Thomas, Vaughn, and Waymaster.
Representative Waymaster votes aye. Not seeing 10 hands, calls raised. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 102 having voted in favor and 18 against the passage of Senate Bill 142, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Representative Christy Williams for a motion to adopt the Agree to Disagree report for Senate Bill 387.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A brief description is simply this is House substitute for Senate Bill 387, which maintains the House position, which is an increase of $309 million of new K through 12 education funding. That also includes new funding for special education, which is $77.5 million. It also amends the at-risk provisions by delaying it by 1 year and implementing a 1-year trial pilot program, as well as a few other amendments. Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the Agree to Disagree Conference Committee report and that a new conference committee be appointed. And I'll stand for questions.
For discussion, the Speaker recognizes Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that you vote no on this Agree to Disagree. It still has the hook of the LOB, and it still has some parts that perhaps there could be some more cooperation and some more collaboration, some more discussion. But I will vote no on Agree to Disagree and ask you also.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close and move my motion.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion carries. The Speaker appoints Representatives Christy Williams, Getz, and Nguyen as conferees and part of the House. Representative Adam Smith, Bergkamp, and Sawyer are appointed to replace Representatives Francis, Neely, and Ballard as conferees on Senate Bill 410. Representatives Adam Smith, Bergkamp, and Sawyer are appointed to replace Representatives Sutton, Penn, and Neighbor as conferees on House Bill 2096. Representatives Adam Smith, Bergkamp, and Sawyer are appointed to replace Representatives Sutton, Penn, and Neighbor as conferees on House Bill 2098. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
The Senate adopts the Conference Committee report, Agree to Disagree on House Bill 2618, and has appointed Senators Thompson, Cluse, and Faust-Cadeau as second conferees on part of the Senate.
Are there announcements? The Speaker recognizes Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a long ways from the Back Row Club. Colleagues, many of you know, and I don't know if you've heard, but there was a massive earthquake off the coast of Taiwan last night, roughly 7.6. There's a lot of devastation in the nation of Taiwan. Bridges have collapsed, tunnels have collapsed, a lot of landslides on the scenic highways. And there's a tsunami warning now for Japan. So I'm going to ask you all for your prayers for that region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Waymaster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means has changed the time to 11:15 and 5:48 South. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further announcements, the Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to recess.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m. or 1400.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The House is in recess. The House will be in order. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
The Senate adopts the Conference Committee Report on Senate Substitute for House Bill 2124. The Senate adopts the Conference Committee Report on House Bill 2498.
The Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to recess.
Short one. Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 2:15.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries. We are at recess. The House will be in order. Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read. Never mind. The Speaker recognizes Representative Will Carpenter for a motion to adopt the Conference Committee Report on House Bill 2124.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I would make a motion to adopt the Conference Committee Report. And I'll give you a little bit of background on this. This is the bill we've all been waiting for, the microbrewery bill. And I want to thank everybody that had a part in this compromise bill. The distributors, the microbrewery folks, everybody. This is truly a compromise bill. So with that, this will amend the law pertaining to microbreweries. Among the changes, it would permit microbreweries to self-distribute beer and hard cider up to certain limits, lower the number of barrels per year a microbrewery can manufacture and store, require a study and a report on from licensed microbreweries on compliance with state laws and rules and regulations regarding the collection and remittance of alcohol tax. The annual barrel limit is, we had it at 60,000. It's lowered to 30,000. The largest brewery we have in our state currently produces about 10,000 barrels a year. So there's no danger of running up against that cap. It would also allow the manufacture of hard cider up to 100,000 gallons. Self-distribution under the bill, the microbrewery licensee would be allowed to sell beer and hard cider manufactured by the licensee to licensed beer and wine distributors, retailers, public venue, clubs, drinking establishments, caterers, temporary permit holders. This would eliminate the total annual sales to 1,000 barrels, which a barrel is roughly 31 gallons. And it's 3,000 gallons of hard cider that they can distribute. And that mirrors the farm winery provisions that we've passed in the past. So this would also allow microbreweries to sell beer, hard cider manufactured by the licensee, both on licensed premise and off the licensed premises, special events monitored and regulated by the ABC. This is similar to the farm winery laws. This bill would also permit microbrewery holders and owners, officers, stockholders, and directors of microbrewery to have an interest in a licensed club, drinking establishment, caterer, or limit on the total annual sales would not apply to the distribution of beer or hard cider by the microbrewery licensee. A drinking establishment or caterer license under the club and drinking establishment in which microbrewery licensee holds 25% or greater ownership interest, or another microbrewery licensee or licensed microbrewery packaging and warehouse facility in which the microbrewery licensee holds a 25% or greater ownership. The distribution requirements would require the microbreweries to have distribute beer under the continuing laws that we have now for distributors. The bill would specify that microbreweries are prohibited from selling and attempting to sell beer or hard cider within the state, except to retailers licensed under the Kansas Liquor Control Act or the Kansas Cereal Malt Beverage Act, or a licensee under a club or drinking establishment act. The bill would also require such sales to be made within a geographic territory that they filed on notice to the ABC. Temporary permits would also be issued. They would be, a temporary permit holder could offer for sell or serve beer or hard cider manufactured for the microbrewery's licensee, purchased or acquired from a microbrewery licensee for consumption on licensed or unlicensed premises or other premises subject to a separate temporary permit that may be open to the public, subject to such terms of the permit. The bill would further allow drinking establishments to acquire and sell beer from microbrewery licensed under the Kansas Liquor Control Act. The bill would also allow drinking establishments to acquire hard cider from the Kansas licensed microbrewery that possessed a federal wholesale permit license. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
For discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the chair did a great job describing what's in this compromise package, and I would encourage you to join us in supporting it. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
I close.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2124. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Representative Rajas votes aye. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 118 having voted in favor and 3 against the passage of House Bill 2124, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The speaker recognizes Representative Francis for a motion to adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 2498.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So House Bill 2498 started out as Senate Bill 272 in the Senate. The CCR that we're going to be reviewing today passed the Senate 34-5. We did pass it out of the House committee. We put it on the consent calendar. It got pulled off the consent calendar and we didn't get it through. So, you know, it's a very important bill for the state of Kansas. So we decided we'd take this route to get in there. What this bill does is it increases the transfers from the state highway fund, which is a portion of our sales tax, our fuel tax, and our registration fees, and it puts those funds into the General Aviation Airport Development Fund. And it's an increase from $5 million to $15 million starting July 1 of 2024. So this money is used for our public use general aviation airports. These are 109 of our smaller airports across the state. And they really serve our rural areas. And one of the reasons they're very important, as healthcare has changed throughout the years, we have an increasing reliance on air ambulances to get some of our sickest citizens to our major areas. It does not provide any funding for the what the FAA defines as a primary airport, which are ones that have more than 10,000 passengers that board annually. They've got some other funding sources for the from the federal government, so the need is not as critical there. They're going to use this money to go towards items such as pavement improvement, safety features, automated weather observation systems, and as the proponent said, those are all very significant for our air ambulance services in rural areas. To just give you an idea about the need, they recently had a need assessment done across the state that said that we had an annual shortfall of $33 million in funding. Currently, about $5 million comes from the state of Kansas. The FAA, through some of their grant process, provides another $30 million. So this additional $10 million a year will help some of our smaller airports improve. It won't meet all of the need, but it'll meet some of the need. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the conference committee report, and I'll stand for questions.
For discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I stand here before you in favor of this HB 2498. And part of it is a recent KDOT assessment of airport infrastructure indicated runway pavement conditions are concerning. And I think the Chair of Transportation explained that very adequately in terms of what those needs are and how far behind we are. So I would encourage you to please vote for SB 2498. Thank you.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question or two for my learned friend from Liberal. I just wasn't clear when I was listening in our caucus, and it's through my own error. Does this go to all general aviation airports, or just those not served by air carriers, or just those with Part 135 operations? Can you just help me understand who it goes to, or who's eligible?
Sure, my understanding is that it goes to the airports that the FAA does not define as a primary airport. To be a primary airport, you have to have more than 10,000 passengers board annually. And as we talked with them, one of the reasons, they've got some other funding sources through the federal government that these smaller airports don't have.
Referring to the larger airports?
Yes.
Well, my particular concern was some boys named Liddon out at Liberal. Perhaps you know the Liddon boys.
I do know the Liddon.
They run one of the finest FBOs in the entire state. Now,
that's good.
So is Liberal going to get some of this money, or is it too big still? Because I know you've had trouble maintaining air carriers coming in. I just kind of curious how my friends are doing.
My understanding is Liberal does not get these funds. You know, I was actually kind of surprised, I think, when I saw that we didn't get it. I thought for sure we'd be under that 10,000 number.
Well, you know, unfortunately, what's happened is those federal subsidies for smaller communities, scheduled airline service has decreased, and accordingly, there's less commercial flights into and out of Liberal and Manhattan and a whole bunch of other places as well. Okay, well, thank you for answering that question. I would remind my good friend from Liberal that I couldn't get $5 million a year for the Heartland Flyer extension. I could only get a one-time allocation, but I'm still voting for your bill because you're a decent guy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
And I would just tell my friend from Sedgwick County that once we see the service development plan and understand what it could really cost the taxpayers across the state of Kansas, I may very likely vote for that bill. With that, Mr. Speaker, I close and I move my motion.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2498. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 117 having voted in favor and 4 against the passage of House Bill 2498, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Representative Delperdang for a motion to adopt the Conference Committee report on Senate Bill 455.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 455 replaces 457, which was consolidated into another bill. 455 amends Kansas or KSA 66104 to prohibit utilities from exercising the power of eminent domain. Let me say that again. It prohibits public utilities from exercising power of eminent domain for siting or placing of solar-powered electric generation equipment, including the panels. The Senate Utilities Committee held a hearing February 19th and passed it to the full Senate on March 27th, where it passed 38-0. Proponents of the bill included Kansas Farm Bureau, Kansas Livestock Association, Kansas Cattlemen's Association, and several private citizens. The Advanced Power Alliance was neutral on the bill, and there were no opponents. This has no fiscal impact to the state. The Senate amended 457, which struck the word generation on page 3, line 8 of the original bill. On April 1st, we heard it in the Utilities Conference Committee, and we made sure the word generation went back into the bill. With the insertion of the word generation, it returned the bill to language consistent with other provisions of the same section of KSA 66104 that prohibits the use of eminent domain for the siting of wind-powered electric generations or turbines, including the towers. Development of wind and solar generation projects are really expected to continue throughout Kansas over the next several years. So this Senate Bill 455 gives clarity and hopefully confidence to landowners that their private property rights will not be infringed upon for the siting of solar panels. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of the Conference Committee report, and I stand for questions.
For discussion, the Speaker recognizes Representative O'Habasam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. As always, our chairman of the Energy Committee did a great job in explaining it. I support it, and I ask everyone for an affirmative vote on SB 455. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, body, and I close.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 455. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 121 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of Senate Bill 455, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Representative Proctor for a motion to adopt the Agree to Disagree report on House Bill 2618.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, House Bill 2618 began life as the Attorney General's bill to correct language from a bill we passed a couple years ago, making it illegal to impersonate an election officer. The bill clarified that you had to have the intent to deceive in order to be guilty of a crime under that statute. And the hope was that that would help with some litigation that's currently before the court about the vagueness of that law. In conference committee, we added Senate Bill 367, which which prohibits government agencies from using money from the federal government to facilitate elections if that money was not authorized for that purpose by the Congress or by the legislature. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt the agreed to disagree conference committee report and that a new conference committee be appointed.
For discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The chair did a great job explaining the bill. While I look forward to a CCR that I can vote for, this is not one of those, so I would ask you to vote against the agree to disagree. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close on my motion.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The speaker appoints Representatives Proctor, Wagner, and Woodard as conferees on part of the House. Are there announcements? Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The conference committee between the Higher Education Budget Committee and Senate Ways and Means on HB 2105 will meet at 3 p.m. in room 281 North. 3 p.m. in 281 North. Thank you.
Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. House Judiciary and Senate Judiciary will have conference committee meeting 15 minutes after the second recess of the second chamber in 582 North, and we will be conferencing on all bills in committee. Thank you.
Representative Berquist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Local government will meet in conference committee one more time in room 212B at 3 o'clock, or about right now.
Representative Estes.
Senate Education and House Education Committees will meet today, April 3rd, 2024 at 5:45 p.m. in room 159 South.
Seeing no further announcements, the speaker recognizes the majority leader for a motion to recess.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House recess until 5 p.m.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. We are in recess.
The House will be in order. Messages from the Senate. The clerk will read.
The Senate adopts the conference committee report to agree to disagree on H sub for Senate Bill 387 as appointed Senators Baumgardner, Erickson, and Sykes as second conferees on part of the Senate. The Senate announced the appointment of Senators Tyson, Peck, and Holland to replace Senators Peterson, Cluse, and Corson as Senate conferees on Senate Bill 410. The Senate announced the appointment of Senators Tyson, Peck, and Holland to replace Senators Longbine, Fagg, and Holscher as Senate conferees on House Bill 2096. The Senate announced the appointment of Senators Tyson, Peck, and Holland to replace Senators Longbine, Fagg, and Holscher as Senate conferees on House Bill 2098. The Senate not adopts the conference committee report on Senate Bill 142, requests a conference and appoints Senators Peterson, Cluse, and Corson as second conferees on part of the Senate. The Senate adopts the conference committee report on House Bills 2481, 2527, and 2588.
Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to accede.
The Senate did not adopt the conference committee report on Senate Bill 142 and requested a conference. I move the House accede to the request of the Senate that a conference committee be appointed.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. The conferees on the part of the House. The Speaker appoints Representatives Francis, Neely, and Ballard. Are there announcements? Don't everybody light up your light at once here. No announcements, I guess. Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to recess.
No, not that fast. All right, so Republicans, I got it right this time. We're going to calendar immediately upon recess. Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 5:15 p.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The House stands in recess. House will be in order. Speaker recognizes Representative Francis for a motion to adopt the conference committee report on Senate Bill 359.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 359 is our mega license plate bill. We've got the Chiefs, we got Sporting KC, we got the Royals, we got KC Current, Sedgwick County Zoo, Topeka Zoo, support the troops. And to save time and effort, we added in the first city of Kansas. So originally 359 passed 103-20 in the House and the Senate 36-2. The first city of Kansas passed 108-9 in the House and 40-0 in the Senate. There was one piece of policy that they inserted into this bill, which would have required all license plates in the state of Kansas to have a county designation on that. We'd had a hearing on that concept and the other concept of no county designations last year. So, you know, we knew that kind of the opinion on it was divided, so to speak. But anyway, we worked out a compromise with them that would require license plates approved for production and issuance on or after January 1 of 2024 to have the county of registration horizontally printed or affixed by a decal to the license plate. So if you've got a license plate now that doesn't have a county designation, you're good. It's only going forward that it would be on those. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the conference committee report, and I'll stand for questions.
For discussion, the Speaker recognizes Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair of Transportation did a very fine job explaining what we were going to do in Senate Bill 359. I would only add that, as you know, we paid the royalty fee for the license plates from $25 to $100 as a sponsor. But for the support the troops will only be a $25 fee, and that's just for it applied to that plate, but we're not charging that full fee for them as well. So vote for HB 359 and go get your plate. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Francis, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move my motion.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 359. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. We got some people. There he is. The roll is still open. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll and record your vote, and record the vote. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Representative Blue. This is the.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bonnie, I'm not happy about this bill. And I just want to show that there is a bulk of them that we have not seen pass this chamber. And I am really upset that there isn't one for my daughter to draw on there for a blank one. And I just also want to state too, if you want a distinctive license plate, that's what the front of your car is for. So I'm going to keep voting no on these, and I wish you would join me.
Does any other member desire to explain his or her vote? Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I vote no. And appreciate the comments of the former speaker. And while looking around the parking garage, love to see that there is a Fort Hays distinctive license plate on their car. I still vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there any further explanation of votes? Representative Carmichael. Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I vote no on the conference committee report on SB 359. Enough is enough. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further explanation of votes? Seeing none, let's move on to, does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Adam Smith votes no. Representative Ousley votes yes. Any further changes of vote? Seeing none. 101 voting in favor and 19 against the passage of Senate Bill 359. The same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Man. Speaker recognizes Representative Francis for a motion to adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 2481.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've got another great bill here that allows Kansans to honor the things that are important to them, whether it would be Fort Hays State University, Kansas State University, or the Kansas City Chiefs. This one, though, is even more important. We get to honor the people that are important to our communities and the heroes in our communities. House Bill 2481, again, is a large bill. We've put a number of these things together. SB 410 had most of the pieces in here. It passed this House 123-0. It included the private first class Henry Lee Fisher Memorial Highway for a portion of K96. It honors the 96th Infantry Division on a portion of K96. It honors Derek Scott Martin Memorial Bridge in Sumner County, the Ken W. Brock Memorial Highway in Crawford County, the Merle Miller Memorial Highway. That is a portion of the Frank Carlson Memorial Highway, the First Responders Memorial Highway in Russell County. Another piece of this bill was we recognized the official state steam locomotive in Abilene, and we also recognized the official state railroad in Abilene. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would stand for questions.
For discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Ballard.
Mr. Speaker, I support 2481. I think all these highways are deserving of people in their communities and people who felt the need to come to us to ask for those streets and also to spend their time writing your recommendations and a combination of things. I would say it's important to a lot of people, it may not be important to some of the people, but they are important, and I am pleased to recognize these individuals. So therefore, I'd ask you to please vote for 2481.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Francis, you may close.
The former representative from Douglas County, I think shares some of my thoughts on this. You know, we hear a lot of very moving stories about the effect that these people made on the lives across Kansas, and it is an important thing we do. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would move my motion.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2481. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Landwehr votes aye. Representative Mason votes aye. Any further changes of vote? Seeing none, 120 voting in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2481, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Speaker recognizes Representative Delperdang for a motion to adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 2527.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2527 was the plant in service accounting and the plant in service accounting and the construction work in progress bill that invests in the electrical infrastructure to ensure Kansas has reliable, dispatchable energy to power the Kansas economy now and in the future. It was a highly compromised bill with Evergy and many stakeholders that we worked with. In conference, we consolidated the contents of other similarly highly negotiated bills into it. That included House Bill 2588, which updated net metering laws and the capacities. And it included Senate Bill 455, which sets up KCC process and approvals prior to retiring coal or nuclear generation in the state. There were no conference committee amendments to any of these bills. They simply rolled into it. For the record, 2527 votes were 111 to 8 on the House, 35 to 2 in the Senate. 455 was 107 to 16 on the House and 29 to 8 in the Senate. 2588 was 116 to 0 on the House side and 32 to 6 on the Senate. It's important to note all of these bills were truly compromised pieces of legislation with multiple stakeholders that we worked out through the course of several months. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the conference committee report and stand for questions.
For discussion, the Speaker recognizes Representative Wahhabism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As always, our chair did a great job explaining the bill, and I support it. I ask for an affirmative vote on HB 2527. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Heiberger.
Will Speaker stand for a question while I sit?
Absolutely.
Could you just tell us a little more details about changes to the Net Metering Act? If we discussed it, I wasn't here then, and
Yeah, I've got the folder if I need to jump into it, but from memory on the Net Metering Act, right now, this is dealing not with industrial level, but rooftop type solar. They're allowed to throw net metering back into the infrastructure at a maximum of 1% of the capacity. The net metering bill increased that to 5%. It was a stair step where it increased, I think, 1% per year for several years. And then it changed the amount that they could put in. And if memory serves me, please don't hold me to this without looking it up, but I think that allowed them to go up to like 100, a little over 100 kilowatts or something like that. And again, I will look it up if anybody really wants to know it.
did it change rates?
When you say rates.
Buyback rates, or?
It did not change any of the rates. It changed capacity only. And it was something that the solar industry wanted because we were right now capping it at 1%, and they're up between 0.5% and 0.75% right now. So we were going to hit that level, and it was going to basically cap off any solar net metering in the future was the real purpose.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Delperdang, you may close.
Thank you, body, for the discussion here, and I close.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2527. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member Representative Barth?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, I voted yes on this. I just want to have a couple comments here. I think there's a lot of things that we're doing that are good from an energy perspective. My probably biggest concern, though, that I would like this body to push back on, and maybe in the future we could negotiate a little more heavy-handed with Evergy on certain things, and that HB 2527, it passes on 90% of the cost of the expenses onto our actual ratepayers, which are our constituents. And I think going forward, we need to do a little bit better job of negotiating a little bit better, because the folks that are profiting from this are the shareholders. And I know we have a shareholder in here that likes to not to vote present, which I appreciate. But I think going forward, if we could do that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further explanation of votes? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Ellis votes aye. Representative Estes votes aye. Any further changes of votes? Seeing none, 119 voting in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2527, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Speaker recognizes Representative Delperdang for a motion to adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 2588.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. House Bill we're going to back up a little bit here. House Bill 2806 we moved the contents from that into 2588. So 2806 was heard on the House floor March 21st, and it passed 106-14. When we did that on March 21st, there was not enough time left for 2806 to be heard on the Senate side. And that is the sole reason that we moved the contents over to 2588. 2588 was heard on the Senate floor earlier today, and it passed 26-7. So both sides have heard and discussed it there. There's currently no state statute that allows telecommunications or video service providers to operate in the county public right-of-way as there are for cities, which falls under KSA 17-1902. Providers therefore deal with inconsistencies in various county permitting processes and fees. This is causing delays in the development and deployment of broadband infrastructure in the rural areas of the state. This bill creates a consistent statewide framework for all Kansas counties, under which providers have the right to construct, maintain, and operate facilities within the county public right-of-way. The county is to provide access and permit process in a non-discriminatory and competitively neutral manner. Counties would be authorized to impose on providers a construction permit fee, an excavation permit fee, and an inspection fee to reimburse the county for reasonable, actual, and verifiable cost of managing the public right-of-ways. The bill also allows the county to recover cost, to repair, to restore any damage the provider causes while working in the right-of-way. We had proponents of the bill, which were Ideatech, Cox, and AT&T. 2588 simply creates equal protections for both providers and counties so they may uniformly understand and apply the right-of-way regulations. And this bill is strictly about the uniformity and outlining the streamlined process for all stakeholders to work together to further broadband deployment throughout the state of Kansas. Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the conference committee report and stand for questions.
For discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The carrier of the amendment, the carrier of the bill did a great job in explaining it. Of course, as our chair, I concur with all that he said. Therefore, I urge for an affirmative vote on House Bill 2588. Thank you.
For further discussion, the speaker recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, would you stand for a question? When we originally heard the right-of-way bill in your committee, there was that second portion of the bill that had to do with crediting the fees against another fee that the utilities were paying to a state fund that I think came back to the counties. My memory is somewhat vague.
Yeah.
But the impression that at least some of us got in committee was that the fees that counties could levy were being deducted from a different fee that the utilities were paying to the county.
Okay.
Are you tracking with me? Because it's been quite a while since.
Can I jump in here? You're talking about page 2, line 41, or item G. A county shall authorize any video service provider as defined in KSA 12-2222 and amendments thereto to offset any fees and charges imposed pursuant to the section against payment of any video service provider fee imposed.
That was the area that caused some of us concern. We weren't sure what it really meant, and honestly, I didn't have a chance to watch the conference committee. Can you explain to us what eventual disposition was made of that provision?
Sure. Some providers provide the franchise fees, and I've got a list of them from 2023, which is the most current. And it's county by county they pay. And some of these are pretty substantial, but it's right now in front of me showing up about $7.2 million they pay. So if we've got a provider that's already paying $7 million to do the right-of-way in certain counties, and another provider that pays nothing in franchise fees, they were just saying, if we're already paying this much out, we would like to deduct some of the expenses of the right-of-way access from what we're already paying in the franchise fees. So again, they were trying to get it more of a level playing ground.
I'll take your word for it. I think I understand what you're saying. I think it makes sense. I should have studied it more carefully. Thank you.
I will follow up on that too, that I questioned it at first also, but when I seen the actual numbers and I
requested numbers from the provider that was bringing this up, I had no idea the dollar amount involved. If it was a few $1,000s here and there, no, this doesn't belong in here. But when it reached up into the multi-million dollars, it needed to happen in order to level the playing ground.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Delperdang, you may close.
Thank you for the discussion, everyone, and I close. Thank you.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2588. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Hoheisel votes aye. Representative Mon votes aye. Representative Turner votes aye. Representative Francis votes aye. Any further changes of vote? Seeing none, 113 voting in favor and 7 against passage of House Bill 2588, the same having received a constitutional majority. The bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Speaker recognizes Representative Rogers for a motion to concur in conference on House Bill 2607.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2607. If you say, well, that sounds familiar, it was just a few days ago, we voted 118 to 1 in support. Friends in the Senate passed it 39 to 1. We decided we would non-concur because that's about all they gave us in our committee. So they gave us one more, and so we decided that we would accept their amendments once we were able to gather another bill, and so we concur. So, Mr. Speaker, I move the House concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 2607, and I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to House Bill 2607? Seeing none? Oh, hold on there. Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was struggling with, we had so many confusing things today. I was struggling with this one. This is a straight 2607, and it is a good bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Does any further member desire to speak to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Rogers, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
As a reminder, if the motion fails, the bill remains in conference. This constitutes final action on House Bill 2607. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 118 voting in favor and 2 against the passage of House Bill 2607, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Further announcements. The Speaker recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House elections and Senate Fed and State will be conferencing on tomorrow at 1 p.m. in room 144 South on all bills in conference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Education Committee will be conferencing with Senate right now, 159 South.
Speaker recognizes Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Transportation Conference Committee will meet at 8:30 a.m. in the morning in 218 North on Senate Bill 142.
Speaker recognizes Representative Ellis.
House Veterans Committee will meet in 582 North, 9 a.m. with the Judiciary Committee on Senate Bill 292.
Speaker recognizes Representative Owens.
Corrections Committee, we still don't have a conference.
Speaker recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House and Senate Tax Conference will continue meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment down in 112 North. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Delperdang.
Members of the Energy and Utilities Committee, we are, as far as I know, we are done with all the conference committee reports. I just wanted to publicly come out and say thank you for everybody's work in there today or this year. We truly worked as a good, outstanding team, and I appreciate it. So until next year.
Are there any further announcements? The Speaker firmly hopes and prays that the Corrections Committee will have one day a conference committee. Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House adjourn until Thursday, April 4th at 10 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.